Time. Let's bring in NBC News intelligence and national security reporter Ken Dilanian, an MSNBC analyst and retired ATF special agent in charge, Jim Kavanagh. Ken, first, the Associated Press reported that the gunman used 2 bump stock devices. We talked about them a bit earlier. Tell us more about that, because for those of us who don't know the gun industry well, it just seems astounding that one individual could fire off the amount of shots that he did.
Sure, Stephanie. Well, our own Pete Williams confirmed this morning that the ATF has determined that he purchased 2 bump stock devices. It's not officially confirmed yet that those were used in the shooting, but that's the working presumption. And you're absolutely right. These are the stock of the gun, obviously, is what fits against your shoulder. This device uses the recoil of the rifle to depress the trigger rapidly in a way that is much faster than any human could squeeze the trigger. So it creates a machine gun-like effect. But because of the way it's designed, it's not technically deemed an illegal modification by the ATF. It's a legal item. You can buy it at your local sporting goods store, depending on where you live, or online for less than $200. It's advertised as safe and fun by a very reputable sporting goods dealer. But you're absolutely right. It creates the effect of automatic weapons fire. And it is a modification that is readily available and seems likely to have been used in this horrific attack, guys.
All right, Ken, so there's the type of weaponry he used, and then there's the number of firearms found in the gunman's hotel room and at his home in Mesquite, Nevada. Again, there are gun collectors who have dozens of guns, but in this case, it looked, it's the kind of thing you might start a small war with.
Right, and we have from his brother an interview saying that he did not know Stephen Paddock to be a gun collector, that he had a few handguns but had no experience with long guns. So it seems pretty clear that this man assembled an arsenal, and this was an expensive arsenal. These guns cost from hundreds to more than $1,000, and he clearly had the resources to do that. And one of the issues of speculation here is, using these modifications can cause the gun to misfire or the barrel to overheat.
Right.
So did he have all these guns so that he could continue switching out his weapons as they malfunctioned, as they misfired? That is undoubtedly something investigators are examining.
Jim, I go back to my earlier question. How would this one single gunman be able to pull off the amount of rounds fired in such a short amount of time?
Well, these modern weapons, and certainly if they're in fully automatic mode or with a bump stock or converted to fully automatic or originally a submachine gun, they can empty a 30-round magazine in just a matter of a few seconds. You can listen to it on the tape. You could actually time it. It's probably 3 or 4 seconds to 30 rounds come out. Even a semi-automatic weapon, Stephanie, if you pull the trigger rapidly, you can empty that magazine in just a few seconds. These weapons were designed for the military. They were designed for war. The original platform of the AR-15 or M16 was designed during the Vietnam era for soldiers to carry in war. They were made to be light. They had a handle on the top that doubled as a sight. They were very good for the soldier. They fired a devastating round at high velocity to injure and kill the enemy. So it was a war weapon. And when this guy went to war, the cut on this thing here is not that he had 43 guns. Spent my life in ATF. Let me tell you, I saw lots and lots of people with lots and lots of more guns. Many of them were just collectors and aficionados and shooters, and some were criminals. But the cut here really that's unusual is to take the 23 guns to the room. This guy was going to war. This was war. And he had the weapons for some purpose, the barrel malfunctions or multiple shooting positions, but this was the end for him. This was war, suicide, this was the end.
Jim, let's just talk for a second. There have been laws implemented, notwithstanding the Second Amendment, that have said that civilians, they're designed for civilians not to have things that are like machine guns, fully automatic guns, where you depress the trigger once and it shoots many times. And yet, as Ken and others have been reporting, there are modifications that can be made to certain guns, particularly those made before 1986. There are modifications that can be made to newer guns, and there are things like these bump stocks that can be completely legally bought. What's the legal position on this? Why have we created a system in which you can create basically a fully automatic gun that emulates a machine gun?
Well, basically because Congress won't act. In large part, it's a wholly owned subsidiary of the gun lobby. It won't enforce any law or pass any law that would make us safer. And it goes with the false narrative that if you're for reasonable gun law, you're against the Second Amendment. Look, I'm a champion of the Second Amendment. I believe in it. I enforced the laws all my life. I love it. I love the Constitution as a whole. But I don't want the Second Amendment to be a suicide pact that, takes away our life and liberty. So it's a false narrative that if you're for the Second Amendment, you're against reasonable gun law. Congress could change the law on bump stocks. They could change the law on conversion kits if they wanted to.
Ken, let's talk about the state of Nevada for a moment. The gun shop here confirms that they sold firearms to Stephen Paddock in the last year, saying he passed all required background checks. Well, he did, but talk us through what those background checks look like in a state like this where things are pretty lax.
Right. Well, he could legally possess, Stephanie, all the guns he wanted. There's no limit on the amount of guns he can purchase, and there's no limit on the amount of ammunition he could purchase. As much money and as large a truck as he had, he could back it up to the gun shop and buy all he wanted. So he was not a prohibited person, a convicted felon, a person illegally, using narcotics or in the country unlawfully. He didn't fit a prohibited category, so he could buy all the guns he wanted. Nevada doesn't restrict it. But what he got an advantage on was with the fully automatic fire from these weapons. Now, did he own those legally? You can own submachine guns legally in the United States since 1934 under the National Firearms Act. The revision in 1986, no more new ones for civilian use. The old ones grandfathered in. But of course, the conversion kits, the bump stocks allow that to happen. So when this guy's up there with a submachine gun, firing into a crowd of 22,000 people for 15 minutes, that's the advantage that maybe the law could help us on by not making that so easy to do. If we restricted that kind of availability, you could still buy a gun, you still have your Second Amendment rights, you could still buy a number of guns, you just may not be, this platoon force on the 32nd floor just mowing down citizens and taking away their life, liberty, and constitutional rights.
And guys, I would add, there's
Ken?
a cultural issue here. There are shooting ranges in Las Vegas where you can pay money and go and shoot an automatic weapon. I've been at a similar shooting range in Tampa, Florida, and I saw families with 12-year-old kids firing automatic weapons at human targets. There are certain states where this is part of the culture, and I'm not suggesting that these people in any way condone what happened here, but they're just not prepared for some of these restrictions that some people are going to propose in the wake of this on things like the modifications. And that's something that the country's going to have to grapple with.
All right, Ken.